Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over Black King Bar, or BKB. I'm going to be showing you what it does, how to use it, and when to buy it. So to start off, let's look at the details of this item. So if you didn't know, you can go to Learn and then Items, and here are all of the items in the game. You can click on BKB and it pops it up over here. It costs about 4,000 gold, gives 10 strength and 24 damage. Now 4,000 gold isn't that expensive. It's a decent later game item, but there are much more expensive items, and BKB is definitely one that you're going to keep in your inventory for the entire game. But for that cost, 10 strength, 24 damage, that's not that great. But that's because you don't buy this item for that tankiness and that damage. Although it's good, you buy it for the active. Now for the active, it costs 50 mana, so you have to have a little bit of mana to activate this, and it has a cooldown of 95 seconds. It also gives you a basic dispel, so if you have a silence or a slow or some other debuff on you, that is immediately gone, but it's not a strong dispel, so you actually can't activate BKB while you're stunned. You have to wait until after you're stunned, or before you're stunned, you actually have to press this, so just keep that in mind. It also grants 60% magic resistance and immunity to pure and reflected damage, so things like blade mail or other pure damage instances don't count when you have BKB active. And then while it's active, the negative effect from enemy spells have no effect. So stuns, silences, anything that slows you or any other debuff doesn't affect you while under the effect of BKB. Now, in the past, this was called magic immunity, but you can see here now, you do take magic damage from spells, it's just not the full magic damage. So magic immunity isn't really the right term. Now they call it debuff immunity. Then the other thing to notice is that the duration says 9, 8, 7, 6. This means that when you first buy it, the first time you activate it, it lasts for 9 seconds, then 8, 7, 6, and 6 is the final. So you will always have a 6-second BKB even after you use it a few times. And I will just mention, in the past, it had no mana cost. The cooldown changed as you used it, and it used to be like 10 all the way down to, I believe, 5. So they have adjusted it, kind of buffing it or kind of tightening the range of the duration. They also nerfed it with the mana cost. They also kind of nerfed it because now you don't take 0 damage from magical spells. So they have changed the way BKB works in some senses, nerfed it a little bit, but it is still a must buy on a lot of different heroes, and it still effectively works the same way, where you don't have to worry about stuns or slows or silences anymore when you have BKB activated. So now that we understand BKB in general, let's take a look at how to actually use it in practice. So first, this axe is a blade mail. Let me show you. If I jump in on this axe with the blade mail as a PA, I take a ton of damage. That's obviously a big counter to PA. But then if I press BKB, you can see that I can jump in on him and do a ton of damage and not really have to worry about that return damage. That's really, really good to have BKB for heroes that get countered by blade mail. Then the obvious other one is when I press the BKB and Lion tries to hex or stun me, it doesn't really matter. Even if the effect is shown above me, it doesn't do anything. But the other thing to keep in mind is that if I press BKB and it's about to run out, let's wait for it a little bit here, and then the Lion uses the stun. At first I won't be stunned, but as soon as I come out of the BKB, I will be stunned. So basically, if any debuff is used on me and it's longer than the duration of my BKB or whatever is left of my BKB, I will come out of the BKB and have that debuff applied to me. So just keep that in mind. It is important. Yes, you get the dispel when you press it at first, but people can kind of stun you at the end of BKB and don't really have to perfectly time it at the end, at the very last second. They can just stun you preemptively a little bit, and then you'll get stunned immediately after BKB. So just keep that in mind. That was a recent change in the last few years, because before, you couldn't even cast spells. You couldn't even do anything to BKB targets. Now, like if I press BKB with this and the Lion ults me, it doesn't do a ton of damage. That's heavily, heavily reduced, as we can see, but it still does something. So you can still cast these abilities that stun or slow or do damage on a BKB target. And then if the duration is longer, they will immediately be affected after the BKB. And you can just see here, let me just cast the ultimate again. You can see how much different that damage is based on just having BKB or not. Then the last thing I want to show you here is also that there are some spells that pierce BKB and other BKB-like abilities like Jug Spin and Lifestealer Rage. And that really is important, because if you're in a game with one of those stuns, you do need to be careful. So Axe is a perfect example. Berserker's Call does pierce debuff immunity. So you can see if you highlight over any spell in the game, you can see there it says pierces debuff immunity. It'll say yes or no. So Berserker's Call says yes. That means if I do press BKB, and Axe comes over and calls me, I am still taunted and stunned. So this is really important with heroes like Axe, other heroes like Enigma with Black Hole. There are very specific and certain rare spells that go through BKB. There aren't very many of them. They're usually ultimates. Actually, Axe's Berserker's Call is one of the only stuns that's a normal ability that goes through BKB. So just keep that in mind. There are times where you can still get stunned through BKB. It's not a fix-all for everything. There are games where you do need to be careful even if you buy this item. So then how and when do we actually use BKB in a game to be most effective? Well, it's pretty straightforward. If you're going to get stunned or slowed or kited in any way and you need to stick on your target, that's the best time to pop BKB, especially in a fight. So Lion is a perfect example. If I want to jump in on the Lion, I'm going to have to press BKB. Otherwise, he's going to use his stuns and hexes on me. He could also use Glimmer Cape or Force Staff to get away, but as a carry, usually as a hero that buys BKB, it's not always going to be your responsibility to deal with those invis and escape things like that. So just be wary of those things. Also, with each hero, it's a little bit different. So there are heroes like PA that like to jump in. That can be a good time to pop BKB. Or there's other heroes like, let's say, Luna. You don't really have a lot of mobility. You just kind of run in, right click, use some spells, and then the enemy tries to go on you, and that's when you press BKB. So it can be a little bit different. It can be situational. You also have to be careful because you don't want to be popping this too early. You usually want to pop it after the fight is already going on, somebody has already initiated, because that way people are committed to the fight and you know you're going to get value out of this item. The other thing to mention in Dota is that there also is turn rate. So it takes time for you to turn and actually cast abilities. So let's say we refresh here and actually I want to dagger this Lion. So when I'm facing away, I have to turn and then dagger. So that can be also something where if this Lion is turned away from you, you can potentially jump in and hit the hero, and then as soon as they turn to try to stun you, you can BKB immediately. Keep in mind though, that is a little bit risky, especially with instant stuns like this Hex. So just keep that in mind. It's something where you don't always have to pop BKB until you see the hero in a cast animation or something like that, or let's say there is even a stun like this Lion stun that takes some time to come out and hit you. You can have a reaction time where you're not pressing BKB until that happens. But keep in mind, that's a little bit risky. It's a little bit more of an advanced kind of technique. Sometimes it's better just to pop BKB preemptively so that you know you're not going to get stunned and you can kill that hero. So then when do we actually buy this item? So let's just look at how we build it in the first place. So it's Ogre Axe, Mithril Hammer, and then a recipe. And the one thing you will notice is the Ogre Axe is 10 strength, the Mithril Hammer is 24 damage, and that is just straight up what you get. There is no addition to the stats that you're getting from these items, and that's pretty rare, honestly, for a lot of items. Usually items have some kind of buff, like even if it's 10 strength, it goes up to 12 or maybe 15 or something like that. That usually happens when you upgrade an item, especially with the recipe here, but this is just such a good item with the active that it doesn't really make the stats much better. But I will say the buildup isn't terrible. Ogre Axe is an okay item to make you a little bit tankier, and it's 1,000 gold, so it's not super expensive, but 1,600 gold, that's pretty expensive, and then a 1,450 recipe, that's not great. So overall, it's not the best or easiest item to build into in the early game. It doesn't give you a lot of value before you actually complete the item in total. So because of this awkward buildup and that it doesn't really give a lot of stats or any kind of farming enhancement, it's really not an early game item. This is usually a third or fourth item that you buy. Maybe it's a second item, you go farming item into BKB, but that's pretty rare. That's only on certain heroes in certain circumstances. Maybe like a PA, you feel like you go Battle Fury and then you have to go for BKB immediately, or something like a Razor where you go for a small, maybe farming item and go right into the BKB because Razor is really about chasing heroes down. But for the most part, you don't want to be buying BKB too early because it doesn't speed up your farm. It's really more for late game team fights. Plus the fact that the duration decreases every time you use it means if you use this early BKB, let's say at 15 minutes because you get it super early, that means in later fights, later game skirmishes, it's really going to have less of a duration, and that can be a problem in that 30-minute team fight or that Roche fight that's really important to win the game. So then which heroes buy BKB and why? There are certain carries that just have to buy BKB, like PA, like Ursa, even like Alchemist, or even a Luna. These heroes either like to jump in, like PA, like Ursa, like Alchemist. They jump in, they stun, they slow, and they want to burst heroes down very quickly. Or it's a hero like Luna who really has to have some kind of defensive mechanic because, yes, she runs around, she uses some spells, she right-clicks, but if she gets jumped on, she can get burst down pretty quickly. Or it's even an off-lane hero. It doesn't have to be a carry necessarily, but someone like a Night Stalker who wants to jump in, get on top of heroes, silence, do damage, right right click, this hero needs BKB. Even though the silence is there, you don't want to get stunned from a distance or slowed so that you can stick on top of targets. So then which heroes don't like to buy BKB? Well, the two things you can look for are heroes that like to buy Manta, and then heroes that have some kind of survivability mechanic that doesn't require them to press BKB to either hit heroes or to get out of jail free. Good examples of that would be Medusa or Anti-Mage. Both of these heroes love buying Manta, and they also have a way to tank up. Medusa with the mana pool and Anti-Mage with the magic resistance. So they don't really love buying BKB because they like to rely on either jumping in and out of the fight like Anti-Mage and just tanking a lot of stuff, also reflecting spells, or they like to be Medusa and they like to just stand there and say, okay, stun me, okay, hit me, it doesn't matter, I'm doing a ton of damage, I have so much HP, so much mana to burn through that you can't really do anything to me. That doesn't mean that these heroes don't ever buy BKB. They just would prefer not to if they can get away with it because they can use the Dispel to get the slows off of them. And then they can usually dodge stuns or play around those stuns and things like that. Then in terms of like mids and off lanes, like I said, there's like Night Stalker. There's a lot of these other off lanes that still like to buy BKB, but sometimes they like to just tank up and absorb damage. So they're like, okay, stun me. Okay, run at me like a Tide or like a Centaur. It's like, I don't really even need BKB because I just want to get hit. I want you to use the spells on me. Or it's a hero like maybe Queen of Pain or like Storm Spirit. They like to jump in. They need BKB so they don't get locked down. But maybe Puck doesn't really like to buy BKB, even though it's one of these control, magic damage heroes, because he has other survivability mechanics. So that's a good example of some mids and some off lanes. Then from support positions, you don't really buy BKB on any support unless they have some kind of channeled spell. So a good example would be Witch Doctor, maybe Warlock. CM probably is the #1 hero though, because she can pop BKB, run into the middle of the fight, use her ultimate, she gets extra tankability from armor with that, and then she's really, really hard to bring down. But there are very rare instances where BKB is good on supports, but for the most part, they like to buy other kinds of survivability items like Force Staff, Glimmer, Ghost Scepter, that kind of stuff. And so that, everyone, is BKB. I hope this helped you understand the item, how to build it, when to buy it, when to use it, and what exactly it does. As always, guys, if you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.